Welcome to week 6, everybody. In this week, we will be focusing quite a bit on the actual building of a business case. So as you look through your one homework assignment, it is pretty extensive, and that extensiveness comes from the expectation that you're going to be presenting me the business case that you're putting together. So I want you to think through all the feedback that I've given you for the last 5 weeks. Things like, can you actually build the Excel spreadsheets? Are you able to use the tools and resources and actually create the surveys that you're going to be using? Think about ways that you're going to present to me your business case. That could be in the form of a PowerPoint, it could be in the form of a written document, but think about how would you do this in your future state, in your future life when you're building your business case. So the next 2 slides are going to go over how to build the business case and the service level agreements. But most important that I ask you is to really put something together. Someone gave me the advice one point in my career that was be bright, be bold, be brief, and be gone. So think of those 5 B's as you're building your business case because you do need to get to the point. And at the same time, you don't want to leave out crucial information. So let's get started. All right, so let's talk through building a business case. So when you build your business case, what's really important are a few things. You need to make sure that your argument for your business case utilizes metrics, so numbers. You also need to make sure that it's telling a story. So as we've talked about, the reason you typically use metrics is because you're either trying to change behavior, you're trying to get approval for a program, or you're trying to implement something or a technology. So you're asking for something. So when you use your business case 10 steps that we're going to talk about, the biggest thing is to make sure you show the numbers, you tell the story, you talk about the fiscal impact, and you want to make sure that you have service level agreements. So what's the end result going to look like? So let's go through the 10 steps of building your business case, and I'm going to give you some real life examples for me personally that I just finished building my business case for a couple programs here within my organization. So first and foremost, you want to identify who you are trying to influence. This is really important to know your audience. Who are your biggest adversaries, I guess? Who are the ones who are on your side? Because if you can beforehand find the people who you have a repertoire with or who believe in whatever you're trying to present, and they can be advocates for you in the room, that's a huge, huge win. It's also really important to know who are the people who are just like, no way, we don't like this, the veto powers. Because sometimes if you can get to them beforehand without kind of that mob group mentality, you can talk through what it is you're trying to do and you can get their buy-in. You can ask them for support. You can ask them to help you. You can ask them for their thoughts and their feedback. And that can help you put your business case together when you're going to present it in front of everybody. So it's really important that you know who you're trying to influence and what that audience that you're going to meet with is feeling on whatever your topic is. Next is you've got to demonstrate your credibility. If you are not credible, if you are not using strong numbers and you don't have a very succinct case, or you've had a history of using fluffy feelings and not antiquated numbers that are more objective versus subjective, you need to change that right away. It is going to be important that you can cite examples of how your program has helped other businesses, would help your business, what are best practices, what are other companies doing. You want to be able to demonstrate that whatever you're asking for is going to have business impact. If you have had prior successes within this group or things that you have implemented, bring that up at that time too, because you want to talk and remind the group about your big wins. But it's super important that that credibility is built and that that credibility continues. So if you've never asked for anything before, this probably wouldn't be your time to ask for $5 million for a new system. This would be your time to say, let's start small with lots of little wins behind you to give you that credibility you need for when you have big wins. The next one is to show how the program meets goals or cultures of your organization. So this goes back to, are you implementing a program that the business wants or that you want? So if I'm going to use me. I just met with our business to request, our healthcare budget for next year. And remember, we're 100,000 associates, so my healthcare budget's in the hundreds of millions of dollars. And I do not want to increase rates for our associates. I want to implement a few programs that are going to help target diabetes, some musculoskeletal disease, and some cancers. And I know that the culture of my organization isn't typically to hold rates flat. And I also know the goal of my organization is that we don't have an increase to the company, right? Because we're trying to go public. So knowing those two goals, I was able to create my business plan around here's the money that I saved this year. Here's how I'm reinvesting that money at a zero-sum cost to the business. I've had prior successes with programs that I've implemented. I brought in those metrics, those numbers, and those ROIs. At the same time, I also oversee an accommodations team, and we need to put together a new accommodations training. It's going to cost money. The business doesn't, want to spend the money, but at the same time, I need to make sure that we are compliant. So I said, here's what the compliance requirements are. Here's the progress of what other companies have done and how quickly they've been able to get through this online training versus in person, what the fines and fees are if we don't do it, some of the past lawsuits that we've had as an organization, and what I'm expecting that this program can do. Not so much being able to reduce lawsuits right away, but that I can actually get data so I can see where they're coming from and extrapolate and blah, 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 right? So I'm being mindful of my credibility. I'm not promising lawsuits are going to be reduced, but I am meeting the goals, and the culture of my organization is we like to know where those things come from, who's not being trained, who is being trained, and who's using those trainings. So really know your program's goals and culture, and make sure that your business is asking for what you're wanting to do a business case for. If you are asking for something that is going to help you with administrative functions, the business case you need to do is say, listen, I know the business wants us to focus more on training and development or hiring people faster, but we're spending, 30% of our time doing manual paper enrollment forms or new hire processes. And because of that, we're not able to do those things. If we put in the system, here's what the ROI is supposed to be, or maybe I can reduce heads or whatever that is. So be very mindful that you always need to go back to your credibility, and you always need to go back to that. The goals and the culture of your organization is being demonstrated through the programs you're presenting. Next, outline how the program will improve competitiveness. So this goes back to the benchmarking again and your credibility. What are your competition doing? What are your downfalls? Where does this come to benchmark? Why are you doing this? And how do you think it's going to give you a competitive edge? Always, always, always. So for me with healthcare, I was able to say, here's where we're benchmarked, here's what our competitors are doing, here's what the industry is doing. I was able to bring in subject matter experts to also be in that room with me so that they could validate what I was saying. There goes back to the credibility, there goes back to goals and culture, and the most important of why we can't, in my opinion, increase rates because of the competitiveness. Demonstrate your program's ability to succeed. So in the healthcare example that I gave you, I was also able to show the prior programs that we did, how it's avoided cost or how it's improved cost or how it's kept costs from inflating, what those programs did quarter to quarter, and how this program that I wanted to implement for diabetes would look the same way. I always err on the side of being very frugal. So although I was told by the vendors and by the various algorithms and numbers that we drew that we were going to be able to save about $2 million in claims and avoid claim cost, I did not present that. I presented a zero sum, that what we spent in implementing is what we're going to get and maybe some. And my CFO knows me well enough to know, first question, Amber, I think you're playing this safe. What do you really think the savings is going to be? But that's because I've built the credibility with him. So something I want you to think about is the word cost savings and the word cost avoidance. And this goes back to credibility. Cost savings means that it's something you have spent money on and you're no longer going to spend that money. Cost avoidance means you're going to avoid future costs. It's a big difference. It's something that HR gets wrong all the time, and it's something that will kill your credibility. If you're in the HR operational space, so you're doing things like systems, benefits, compensation, retirement, global mobility, anything that's not really training or development, but it can also apply to training and development. If you haven't spent the money on the lawsuit, or if you haven't spent the money on the claims, or claims are supposed to go up 12%, but it hasn't actually been spent, and you're going to avoid claims and only do 10%, that's avoiding costs. That's avoiding future costs, not saving future costs. So know the difference on that because it's a very big deal. All right. So next is you want to be able to demonstrate your program is going to succeed. So you're going to do this by making sure that you can show how this solution has worked for others. You're going to want to talk about, here's how it will be successful, but this is what could happen if it failed, and this is the roadblocks that I see. You want to have that transparency. You want to talk about, here are the factors within the business of why this would succeed. So let's talk about a sales technique. And that, when you use a Myers-Briggs sales technique of teaching people how to hone in on someone's learning or listening style right away, within the first 60 seconds, we see sales increase by X amount. And in our organization right now, unemployment's low, people have extra money to spend, and they're going to want to buy gumballs. And because they want to buy gumballs, the industry's showing that if we do these sales techniques, we could send 50% more gumballs, whatever it is. But you want to demonstrate that whatever you're suggesting, the program, the training, so forth, that you have the internal talent or resources or structure that's going to make it successful. Or if you don't have that, why you need to invest in whatever it is you're asking so that you can have that. You also need to outline what the economic impacts are. So let's think about things like unemployment rate. So if you are promising that with this wonderful HRIS system, you're going to be able to hire people 10 times faster, but the economic impact of the fact that you have low unemployment could impact that, you need to talk through it. You need to make sure that you are outlining each and everything in the business that could impact your program. And at the same time, you should be highlighting all the improvements to revenue, the improvements for profit. What's the ROI? So I talked to you guys about, I knew how much this diabetes program was going to cost per person, how many people I thought would take part of it, and then that we're going to at least save that much in their claims. So I put that on there. I also talk about, and something that many of you missed on some of your putting it togethers, was how much something's going to cost, not only in the time and the labor of the training, but what the ROI is going to be and what that differential is. My ROI could be, I sell 100,000 more widgets, but if I spent $100,000 on the training, I was a zero sum. So you really want to make sure that you guys are mindful, and that is key. Bottom line, you have on every business case an executive summary. The executive summary is what you want to do, how much it's going to cost, how much you think you're going to get back in revenue, and how long it's going to take to deliver. If you're doing a business case on something like an HRIS that has a longer time delivery, or maybe it's a compliance training that's not going to have immediate impact, you're going to want to talk through that so that the business understands it's more of avoiding future lawsuits, keeping us compliant, and so forth. Typically on those things, you don't do big business cases like this. These are things where you want to do trainings, developments, HRIS systems, asking for zero increases for healthcare. Big things are when you build big business cases. So then the next thing is to highlight your project plan. Always have a project plan and timeline along with your deliverables. This is kind of your SLA. When is it going to start? What are the key milestones? What's the timeline? Who are your stakeholders that need to help you? Who are the influencers that you need help with? Who are you going to partner with? And then more importantly, what's your SLA? So you're going to want to talk about, what is the expectation of success? What does it look like? How is it going to be measured? And show that. Be able to show how you're going to measure it. So the next couple things, the what's in it for me, the being flexible, and owning your timeline and outcomes. These aren't so much things that are their own like slides per se, but they're things you need to be mindful as you're building the other 7 items. You need to know what is in it for the leaders in the room. Why should they support your business case? If they get there with them, you're going to have way more success in getting something approved. So if I'm a sales leader and you're going to deliver the sales training and I'm going to get something out of it, which is more sales, well then that's a good with them for me. Maybe not for the CFO at the moment for his individual group, but when he sees the sales leader buys in on it and the sales leader is like, yes, 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 he or she is going to buy in on it. You need to be flexible. Be prepared to adapt on the spot. Be prepared for leaders to say, well, what if we cut this part of the training and did this instead? Go in with a slew of other gives and takes ready to discuss. Always have a little deck with you of more information than not. So when I go in and talk about benefit renewals and I go in asking for various trainings, I have this little secret deck. They all laugh at me that I bring in, and it's basically every data point that I think they could possibly ask me, along with any of the other companies that I've looked at, or if I didn't do project A but I did project B, or if we were to say we only could do 1 instead of 10, what would it look like? So I always have contingent plans because I go in and I go big or I go home, right? Ask for it all, and then I see what's going to happen as the call or the meeting, transpires, and that's when I can ebb and flow. So be ready to be flexible. And most importantly, you guys, own your timelines and your outcomes. You need to be accountable. They need to know that you're project managing it, that you're going to be responsible that the end service level agreement's delivered or that ROI is delivered, and make sure you have a stake in the game. Like, if I don't deliver this, here's what my consequence would be, or here's what I'm willing to give up, or if I do deliver this, like healthcare, I want a portion of that money back so I can reinvest it in future. So make sure as you're building your business cases this week, you are doing your be brief, be bright, be bold, be gone, your 4 B's. Make sure you're following those. But at the same time, make sure that you're building it enough that you have your talking points, that you're able to have your numbers, you know who your stakeholders are, because I genuinely want you to be able to do this. So the feedback, as I've said, that I keep on giving all of you is, do you know how to build this in Excel? Do you know how to build this tool or resource? Do you really know how to do your 5 attributes of a metric, right? The 5 attributes of a metric go into this. Those are those numbers. You're going to look at quality, time, cost, customer service. You're going to look at all those things. So when you're identifying what it is that you need to do, and you're really looking how you're going to demonstrate your credibility, go back to those 5 attributes of a metric. How do you create them? How are you going to measure them? And then that's going to show how your program meets those goals and criteria of your business. All right, last but certainly not least is service level agreements. So I'm going to talk about 2 different service level agreements. The one I'm going to talk about first is one that's not in the book. It's service level agreements that are the day-to-day reminder of who your customer is. So I think many times HR forgets that their customer is the associate or the department. So when I hear, on the train or on, last weekend we were going to Catalina and there was this woman complaining about human resources and how, they wouldn't hire someone on a Tuesday because that's not when they do hiring. It's only on a Monday. So her new hire was going to have to wait another, couple weeks or something to that nature. I thought to myself, my gosh, if we did that to a client, the client would fire us. And we don't ever do that to a client. So we need to be mindful of understanding who our customer is, which is the business. I'm not saying that we do things that make it more cumbersome for us or we have so many one-offs that we're not effective or efficient. But what I am saying is look at your red tape and why do you have the red tape there? And if it was a customer in your business that your sales team created that red tape for, would you still have that customer? So service level agreements that are tried and true in my team. We have things like 24-hour response time to all emails and phone calls. We have things like, 48-hour response time in dealing with a leave of absence. And we have another thing of a 72-hour from front to back process of any accommodations. Those types of deliverables are very important because they're a customer service aspect of making sure that we're on top of the people we're serving. So your service level agreements might not have the 3 attributes of an agreement, the deliverable, the reward, and responsibility completely written out, but I bet you have more than you think you do. So let me talk about one of mine, which is we make sure that when we implement a program like the diabetes management, what's our deliverable? So the deliverable is we're going to reduce our claim spend and avoid future claim spend by, for me, it was a couple $1 million. So the reason that deliverable is important is because we need to do that within a 1 calendar year approach. So I let the group know this is the amount of people we're going to target. It's going to be over a 1-year approach. Here's how I'm going to measure it. And I show them exactly how I'm going to measure it. I tell them that with the 5 attributes of a metric, here's the quality metric that we hit, Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, the amount of people we want to hit. Here's the cost metric, Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. This is the cohort group. This is what they were spending. This is what they should be spending in the future. The time metric, we talk about the quarters, how we're going to measure them in the quarters. The quantity, we're talking about the volume of claims, the volume of people, and how many of those people we think that are going to actually be part of the program, right? What's the take rate? And then the last thing is the satisfaction. So we also measure how satisfied the people are with this program to come up with our ROI. So those are the deliverables, and I spell those out, and you should be able to spell them out too. The rewards and penalties. So if we don't meet this, I built in a performance guarantee with the vendor that if they don't at least save us in costs what we spent, we get back half of what we've spent. So we have half the stake in the game, and so do they. The rewards are, to my executive team, is that if I'm able to deliver at least covering it 100%, they let me do it the next year. And this actually did happen with another program. If I'm able to deliver 1 times more than what we spent, so not only did I cover, but I saved another 1 times, I ask for half of it. I don't ever ask for all of it, I ask for half of it. They keep half, right it to the bottom line, they give me half to re-implement a new program, which is how I'm implementing the program that I'm implementing this year. The program that we implemented last year has actually saved us 2 times. It's avoided another $2 million, and it's actually reduced us a couple million. So of that $4 million, I only asked for $2 million of it. I didn't get $2 million, I got $1 million of it, and then I'm reinvesting it in this current program. I then highlight who's responsible. So this is a double-edged sword. I let the group know what I'm responsible for, but I'm also telling them what they're responsible for. I need the executives to be sponsors of this program. If they don't talk about it, do some videos, do on all hands meetings, right? I have what they're responsible for. Well, then I tell them it's not going to work and I can't be held responsible for what I'm supposed to deliver. I also do the same thing with phone calls and emails. In order for me to deliver a 24-hour roles and responsibilities of returning phone calls, you need to be able to send those emails in the right place. So if you don't email the right person and then you email us 5 or 6 times and you've taken away from other people, you are not allowing me to meet my deliverable. And we call each other out in my organization on those things. So that way everybody knows who's responsible for what. So as you build your business case, make sure you put in a service level agreement, and it could be for the ROI of what the training. You are going to have a service level agreement of how many people, let's say, you're going to train, when they're going to be trained by, and what you think their deliverable will be, in the sense of what's that 5 attribute metric that you think you're going to get from them in the ROI. SLAs are a big deal, you guys. HR doesn't do them very often, and when you can say that you have an SLA to a program that you're asking to implement, or even if you can just say you have an SLA on your response time and you actually measure it and you adhere to it, I promise you, you're going to build some credibility and you're going to look like a pretty top-ranked HR team. So good luck. If you need help, feel free to give me a call.